Hi, this is George Cow, and welcome to Our Highest Work. It's a podcast to share the best ideas about spiritually based business success and to create a community of wise and loving mutual support. As always, I like to begin with a thought, a quote. And this quote today is also actually from Mahatma Gandhi. I know I've been quoting him quite a few times here, but this one is really right in alignment with our episode today. And the quote is, "Action expresses priorities." Profound, and I'll say this again. Action expresses priorities. So I invite you to comment on what that quote means to you, and any thoughts you have about what that quote means and says, and what you might how that affects your life. So here in Our Highest Work, as I mentioned, we are building a community, an online community, perhaps one day it'll be offline as well, to encourage each other toward our highest calling, that which is truly and most important, and then to bring that energy and wisdom into our daily life. And today's episode is about managing our priorities. And I really believe that everything we watch and listen to and read every single day affects our thought life. So my hope is that this podcast will be continually uplifting your thought life to a place that where you're feeling even ever more connected to your highest calling and your truest path. So if you would like to join us and comment on this episode, which I really love to have you do, go to the our community, which you can find at www. Actually, if you want to find this actual episode and to comment on it, it's ourhighestwork.com/3, and that's that represents episode 3. Again, ourhighestwork.com/3. And the other thing I want to say is, in our community, we actually just launched our Facebook group this week as I'm recording this, and there already have been a couple of introductions in our community, and I just want to thank, let's see, I remember there was Jackie who introduced herself, there was Ashit who introduced himself, and then there is Elena who introduced herself, and Elena also has been incredibly, she's been modeling, commenting on other people's intros, which I love, so thank you, Elena, for modeling that. If you're a current member of the community, do reply to other people's introductions, new members' introductions, so that they can feel welcome and you can start to make that connection. And if you are new and you haven't yet introduced yourself in our community, I welcome you to go and do that. And again, you can find our, actually to find our community page, go to ourhighestwork.com/community. Okay, so one of the comments I want to mention from last episode, which we talked about managing our perspective, a comment from Kevin Craig, and he wrote, "If time is money, then the time spent keeping tabs on emails from a questionable source costs more spiritually and financially than the cost of missing one good email that source might send." And in the last episode, one of the things we talked about is to really reconsider how many email newsletters we all, you may be subscribed to. Chances are we tend to be subscribed to too many, and it's always an action of pruning. And so Kevin Craig's comment is very apropos to that, so thank you, Kevin, for that. So on this episode, let's see, so far I'm seeing comments from, let's see, actually Bob has been actively commenting there, so thank you so much, Bob, for helping me experiment with this new sort of Facebook commenting idea here. So why, actually, before I go launch into managing our priorities, I always want to spend just a few minutes giving some kind of either marketing or spiritual wisdom. As I mentioned, I'll be doing that every episode. This episode is going to be about personal growth. So I'm going to spiritual and personal growth. So I'll talk about marketing for just a couple minutes. And so the tip I want to share today is actually a quote from Seth Godin. And it's not so much a quote as actually he wrote a very short blog post. And I thought this blog post was so helpful to bring us back to the priority, the highest priority of marketing. And Seth Godin's blog post was called "The Most Important Question," and this is how it goes: the most important question. And Seth Godin, for those of you who don't know, is one of the top marketing teachers recognized in the world today. And so he says the most important question, it's not, is my price low enough? Is it reliable enough? Do I offer enough features? Am I on the right social media channels? Is the website cool enough? Am I promising enough? No. The most important question in marketing something to someone who hasn't yet purchased before is, do they trust me enough to believe my promises? Without that, you have nothing. If you have awareness, but people haven't bought from you before, it's likely that they don't trust you as much as you would hope. If you are extending from one business to another, it's also likely. In fact, if your value proposition is solid, but sales aren't being made, look for trust issues. Earn trust, earn trust, earn trust. Then you can concern yourself with the rest. So thank you, Seth Godin, for that very wise blog post. You can find Seth Godin's blog by going to www.sethgodin, that's Godin.com. Actually, you can even just go to google.com and Google the word Seth, S-E-T-H. Isn't that amazing? And he's got probably the top Google result for the word Seth. SethGodin.com, and then click on the word blog, and he has been blogging every single day. As far as I know, he's been blogging every single day for more than 7 years. I haven't read all of his blog posts, far from it, but I heard him speak on a podcast recently about how it's about showing up every day, even if it's just a short blog post. He shows up with as much helpfulness and generosity as he can, because he believes that it's marketing is not about clever tactics to manipulate people into buying. Those are all short-term and, I believe, not very healthy results for spiritually, for the world too. But true marketing, done in a way that is for the longest term for humanity and for our souls, the best kind of marketing is about building trust. And it's about looking at the long term. It's about building a tribe over time and then making an offer that they truly need and that you are truly qualified to give. So it's not about get rich quick. At get rich quick is when get rich quick happens legitimately, it's because someone has been earning trust over time. Then they can make a product offer that is thoughtfully built for the audience that they're truly qualified to give. And then the audience says, well, of course I would buy this because it's right for me and I trust you. And therefore get rich quick happens, right? But get rich quick from no audience, no trust at all is tends to take a lot of manipulation and tactics to promote the lizard brain thinking and all that stuff, which is not good for humanity as in the long term. So that's not what I would promote anyway. So anyway, I hope you found that marketing tip helpful, and let's now go on to today's episode about managing our priorities. So why is it important? Why is managing our priorities important? Well, I think the answer to this question is to ask yourself, what kind of life do you want to be living? And what kind of world do you want to live in? And if you look at the way you spend your time and the way you spend your money and your energy, are your actions leading you most effectively into the life you want to be living? And I'll say this again. If you look at the way you spend every hour of your day, every day of your life, and also the way you spend your money, are your actions leading you most effectively into the kind of life you want to be living? And if the answer is, I'm not sure, if the answer is anything less than absolutely, I'm crystal clear, yes, every hour of every day I'm spending towards most effectively living the kind of life I want to be living and creating the kind of world I want to see. If the answer is less than crystal clear, absolutely yes, then I think this episode will be uplifting and strengthening and clarifying for you. So we started the episode with saying action expresses priorities. So if you know you can act more purposefully every day, then it's time to revisit your priorities, right? Because in our world today, the more that we engage the internet, the more we engage with any kind of media, television, radio, the internet, emails, etc., the more difficult it becomes to remember our priorities, because any engagement with the outside world dilutes our memory and that's actually a good way of saying any engagement with the outside world dilutes our memory about our priorities and because other engagement with the outside world means, and again, like we said last time, every single word you hear, every single word you read, every single thing you watch affects your thought life, and therefore dilutes what your own priorities are, because chances are the outside world that you engage with doesn't have exactly the same priorities that you do. Especially now in mainstream media, that's hardly the case. So, by the way, before I go on, again, I encourage you, if you're watching this episode, to comment as you watch. Anything you want to remember, I encourage you to even just write a few words of what you want to remember, and by doing that, you help me to see what's really getting through, resonating with you, and also you help others to remember what was said in this video. So thank you. If you're listening only and you're not yet watching the video, you can watch it at ourhighestwork.com/3. So going forward, and again, thank you, Bob, for being actively commenting right now as I'm recording this. So I really appreciate you, Bob. Okay, so one of the things we often say about our priorities, about what's important to us, is, I just didn't have time to do that. And what I want to encourage you to start doing is to replace I didn't have time with, so next time you are about to say I didn't have time, okay, I encourage you to replace it with this instead. Say, I didn't manage my time as well as I would have liked. Now, I know that's harder to say because it makes you look at, oh, when you say I didn't have time, you are giving up your power. You are saying somehow you weren't given enough time that day. Whenever you use phrases like that, you are giving up your power. You're doing two things. One, you're not taking responsibility, right? And it's easy not to take responsibility. It's easy to say, oh, I didn't have time and this happened to me, therefore I couldn't do that. And it's easy to say that to other people because other people will, other people will start to see you as a victim. Because you see yourself as a victim, like, oh, I wasn't given enough time. These things happened to me. This person called me. This other event happened in my life. Therefore, I didn't have time to do that which was important to me, or that what I promised that I would do for you. And you're not taking responsibility, and that's easier because other people can sympathize with you. Oh, I know what it feels. Everyone wants to sympathize with each other because everyone wants to be victims and not take responsibility. But that's the easier route. But what we don't realize we're doing is, by not taking responsibility, we're also simultaneously giving away our power. We're internally saying, oh, I'm not empowered. My life is not something I empower myself to create. It's something that I let other people give me enough time. I let external events keep themselves at bay so I have enough time. So replace it with saying, I didn't manage my time as well as I would have liked, but I can and I will do better next time. Because you've got the power, okay? So if you didn't manage your time well enough, it means that you weren't crystal clear about your priorities, okay? So if you want to manage your time well, be crystal clear about your priorities in life and in business and whatever areas of life we're talking about, and then reflect on those priorities on a regular basis. I encourage you to do that daily. Reflect on your priorities daily so you can remain clear. So at this time, I'm going to share with you sort of, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to share with you 5 priorities for life areas. And I share 5, and I'm seeing my fingers here on the screen. I'm sharing 5 because if you want to reflect on your priorities daily, it's really helpful to just match them to your 5 fingers. Now, if you have more than 5, you can use the other hand too. But match them to your 5 fingers so you can just, every single day, even if you take, 5 seconds, right, to just count them off on your hand so that you can just have a touch point. Your hand being the touch point for reflecting on your priorities. You can take more than 5 seconds. Hopefully it'll take maybe a minute or even 5 minutes to think about what each one of those means. Even if you take 5 minutes a day to reflect on your priorities, that is time well spent, because that allows you then to manage your time with more crystal clarity. Okay, so 5 areas. 1, I would say spiritual growth. And again, you might not have the same 5 that I do, but I encourage you to seriously consider these. Okay, so 1 is spiritual growth, and that will mean something for you as slightly differently than what it means for me. So spiritual growth, we'll talk about these a little bit more in depth. The second one is health, okay, and that will mean slightly different things for different people. Third is relationships. Fourth is livelihood, that which you do to make money, to earn a living. Fifth is hobbies / volunteering, okay, what you do in your free time outside of your livelihood. And outside of your relationships, outside of your health, right? So let's kind of go through these just a little bit, just to give you some ideas. And I hope you will write down, if you haven't already written them down, or if you haven't done this recently, to revisit them and rewrite them again. It's a great idea to rewrite them at least once a year, to kind of journal about them. So spiritual growth. What I would offer here are 2 areas. One is your perspective channels, and we talked about this in the previous episode, so you might want to watch that episode to get more in-depth ideas about managing our perspectives. But our spiritual growth is greatly tied with our thought life and how we manage our thought life. So, for example, what books are you regularly reading? What types of books are you regularly reading? So, for example, for me, I'm renewing my habit right now of the first thing I do every day after I wake up is to spend a few minutes reading a spiritual book, and also the last few minutes before I sleep, I read a few minutes a spiritual book. That way, I have bookends of my entire day is thinking about spirituality by reading a book that inspires me in that way. Another question is, what kind of videos do you watch on a regular basis? Watch some kind of spiritual video, at least once a week. Perhaps this video, right, our highest work, maybe in that kind of category, because we're always talking about spirituality. Podcasts, what kind of podcasts or audios do you listen to? When I listen to podcasts at least once a day, because I go on my afternoon walk, or in the morning as I'm preparing my breakfast, or if I'm washing the dishes in the evening. Those are great times to listen to podcasts so that I can continue to keep uplifted or keep learning about something. Okay, so one aspect of spiritual growth is the channels, your perspective, how you manage your perspective channels, books, videos, podcasts, etc. The second aspect of spiritual growth is your practices. So a couple of examples of practices: meditation. Okay, a lot of people have found benefit with meditation over thousands of years. It helps train your mind to have more focus, to have more concentration throughout the whole day. It also tends to, a lot of people say it clarifies, purifies the connection you have with the divine. So meditation is something you might consider. Prayer is another one that continues to strengthen and clarify your connection with the divine. A gratitude practice. So I try to say thanks throughout the day, just even by myself as I'm walking down the hall to get some water, to be thankful, to literally say thanks out loud. I work at home, so I'm able to do that. But if you work with someone else, if you work in an office, you can say things internally as you walk, whenever you walk to go get some water, or to use the restroom, or to walk from one room to another room, etc. So I invite you to share your spiritual growth practices. What has made a difference for you spiritually? I know that I'm excited to read what those are for you, and others in this community would be excited too. So you can comment underneath our episode. Ourhighestwork.com/3 will get you to the commenting page. Okay, so the second area of life that I want to briefly touch on today is health. I sincerely hope you will add this to your life priorities, because without your health, it is going to be extremely difficult to pursue any other life priority. And speaking of health, let me take a quick sip of tea here. So a couple of areas of health to seriously consider is your sleep at night, okay, your nightly sleep. There are so many wonderful free articles and videos online about getting better sleep at night, so I really recommend that you just go to google.com and type in how to sleep better. Okay, how to sleep better, or how to have better sleep, and you'll come up. Google is amazing for naturally filtering to the top articles and videos that most people have found helpful. So it's a great way to find, always find the latest great articles about sleeping better. Just go to google.com. But one of the practices, I think, for sleeping at night, there's lots I could talk about, maybe in a future episode, but one thing I want you to consider is, what time do you turn off your computer at night? Right? What time do you turn off your computer at night? Especially if you're someone who works from home, or just at night you like to use the computer for recreational purposes. What time do you turn off the computer? Because if you manage that time, say, okay, I'm going to turn off my computer at 10 p.m. every night, or whatever it is, it'll help you to go to sleep earlier, and therefore to get more sleep. So something to consider. Okay, another area of health to seriously consider is exercise. And again, just go to google.com and just Google something like, exercise requirements, or best way to exercise, or whatever. But one thing I'll share with you that's worked so well for me over the years is 30 minutes brisk walk 5 times a week. I've done a bit of research on this, and it turns out that for human beings today, it's very simple for us to get enough exercise. Is 2.5 hours of moderate physical activity every week. 2.5 hours of, again, I say this again, 2.5 hours of moderate physical activity per week. And that's a brisk walk was one of those. Brisk walking is basically walking fast enough such that if you were to try to carry a conversation with someone doing a brisk walk, it would be difficult to. So you're not running, and you're not, walking so fast you look like a maniac, but you're walking fast enough that it's hard to carry on a conversation. So faster than you might walk at home, for example, going from one room to another. So brisk walk, so I do it 30 minutes 5 times a week, so Monday through Friday basically, and that's currently what science says is the exercise requirement. Another element of health that is really, a lot of people don't realize, is most of us sit too much. So I encourage you to go to this website, www.juststand.org, juststand.org, and read the science behind how sitting as much as most, I'll just say most Americans, because that's what I would know, sitting as much as most Americans sit is worse for your health than getting enough exercise that most people get at the gym or doing brisk walks. So actually, sitting as much as most Americans is actually worse for your cardiovascular health than even exercising. They did studies to show, okay, a group of people who didn't sit very much versus a group of people who sat a lot but got enough exercise, as science says. The first group, the people who didn't sit very much, were actually healthier cardiovascularly. So somehow our bodies have evolved. We're not meant to be sitting as much as most Americans do. So for example, I actually stand as I work all day. I have a standing desk, but before I got a standing desk, I just basically put a bunch of books, big books, on a desk and worked standing up on my laptop, or put my computer on there. So really consider, it's not a one-shot activity to suddenly go from sitting all day to standing all day, but just go gradually. Okay, maybe instead of sitting all day, try standing for just half an hour where you might have been sitting instead at times. Okay, so think about that. Okay, another aspect of health is regular recovery breaks. Throughout your day, it's not healthy to be working on a project for hours at a time. I always get up, even if I'm standing at my computer, right, stationary. I actually have a high chair behind me right now as I'm recording. It's more comfortable as I'm recording episode to be kind of leaned on my high chair. I'm not even really sitting, but I stand most of the day. But I get up from my desk. I go from my standing position to go get some water, use the restroom, or just even walk down the hallway to think. Okay, at least every half an hour, and I've gotten used to that. So I encourage you to think about, just consciously plan your recovery breaks. I also take regular, once an hour I do kind of gentle breathing, just for 3 minutes. I do some stretching as part of my 3-minute break every hour. Okay, so let me go on, because these episodes go by so quickly. I want to try to keep them to about half an hour each one. Third area of life is relationships, and please consider this to really consciously think about it and plan it. So relationships, who am I talking about here? The people you live with, if you live with anybody, it could be a spouse, a roommate, etc., parents, whoever you live with, your children. Anybody you live with, those are your most important relationships, because you see them all the time. You live with them. You have the most effect on their lives, and vice versa. So today I invite you to, as you're planning out your life priorities and journaling about them, think about, how can I improve the relationships with the people I live with, or the person I live with, okay, if anyone. Okay, second one, those you spend the most time with outside your home. So besides those you live with, do you work with other people? And when I say those you spend the most time with, it doesn't necessarily mean in person. It could be people you talk on the phone with, people you email with a lot. So write down, let's say the 10 or 20 people you interact with the most in your life outside the home. Write down 10 or 20 people and consciously think, how can I improve my relationships with these people, just even a little bit? How can I improve? For example, you email a lot with a coworker. How can you put just a little bit more friendliness in your emails, a little bit more warmth, a little bit more asking them how they're doing, to really care, just taking a moment every day just to care how they're doing, right? Okay, because the quality of your relationships matter a lot to your happiness overall. The fourth one is livelihood, and we're going to talk a lot about true livelihood and marketing in the coming months. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. If you want some information now about my thoughts on true livelihood, you can go to my website, georgekao.com, georgekao.com. Lots of free resources there. All my content nowadays is free, so you'll find it all there. Hobbies and volunteering. We'll also be talking about that in the coming months with the topic of mindful activism. So I won't go too deep into that right now. So I realize that we're just about out of time with this episode. So let me just. I wanted to actually share with you something else we'll talk about another time, which is the time management quadrants. Something you've already thought about. If you haven't yet thought about your time management quadrants, just go to google.com and search time management quadrants. So I have a little 2 assignments for you today for further research. Google time management quadrants, and the other thing I want you to Google is big rocks first, or put your big rocks first. So that's 2 things I want you to Google and to think about this week, because those 2 things, if you think about them carefully, will really, really help you to make sure that your life priorities are actually that which you live on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. Because your life priorities, it's one thing to journal about them, which is incredibly important, to get clear about them and to review them every day. But then it's another thing. The next step really is to then put your life priorities into your day-to-day life, into your week-to-week life. Typically that means scheduling them in and building habits around that, okay, daily habits around that, which we'll talk about in the next episode, which is managing our patterns. So we'll talk about managing our habits in the next episode. Okay, so thank you for watching this episode. I hope you found this helpful. Please comment below this episode and let me know what you found most helpful about this episode, and even any questions that you have. And by the way, if you see questions from anyone else in our community, I invite you to answer those questions. I am certainly not the only one who can answer questions around here, and certainly I probably wouldn't be able to answer all the questions either. So I invite you to post what you learned about this episode and any questions you have, as well as answering other folks' questions. And finally, a couple of things. If you liked this episode, if you felt that the message of this episode is important, I invite you to share it on social media. Don't let the content stop with you, but just let it continue on and share with others who may also benefit. And if you would like to help out this podcast, the simple way of helping out is by going to giving a review of this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and other places. And you can do that by going to ourhighestwork.com/review. ourhighestwork.com/review. And it's a great way to help out this podcast and let more people find it. So to end, I will remind us of the quote we began with, which is, action expresses priorities. Thank you for being part of this community, and I look forward to being with you in our next episode. Be well.